we got to talk about a report that came out a few days ago. Okay. It has created a lot of discussion on social media. Greg Wyshynski of ESPN came out with a report saying that the NHL is discussing expanding from an 82-game season to an 84-game season. And this has also brought up some discussion amongst hockey fans as to whether the NHL should actually implement a play-in tournament similar to the NBA, where the 7 plays the 8 seed, the 9 plays the 10 seed, and then the winner of those games play each other. And, you know, the 7-8 seed, the loser also gets a second chance to get in. But anyways, this little mini play-in tournament that the NBA does, and fans are thinking maybe the NHL should implement that as well. So what are your thoughts on expanding to an 84-game season? I'll just give you my initial take before I'll let you go first. But I think it's too long to keep my take short. But what are your thoughts on expanding to an 84-game season?
Yeah, I don't see really and truly what the point is. Like, I know what the point is, and it's going to come down to money, and owners like more money, and more games equals more money. But I don't see, I'm not excited about 2 more games. I'll put it that way. To me, like, the season's long enough. Again, if it was actually about the sport, I think most people would say a shorter season would be better, something in like the 60-something or 70-something games, but we all know that's not going to happen. As far as the play-in goes, my initial reaction was like, nah, I don't want to see. It's kind of like a novelty act thing. Like, it's kind of cheesy and whatever. And again, it kind of takes away from the regular season. You play 82 games. You have your chance to make the playoffs. If you didn't get in over 82 games, like, why should you get a chance? But at the same time, the National Hockey League is an entertainment business, and it would be A+ entertainment. We'd all be glued to our seats. We'd all be watching, like, we wouldn't miss one. I mean, you're watching game 7s essentially. So that I can get a little more on board with, because the excitement that would be created. But just making an 84-game sched for the purpose of making an 84-game sched, I'm not really into it.
Yeah, I think it's too long. Like, that was my initial take when I saw the report. Like, I think the NHL should be slashing games from the schedule, not adding games to the schedule. Like, I think an 82-game season is too long.
Yeah.
Like, quite frankly, I think it should be 76 games, something in the 70 range. You know, I have the same thoughts when it comes to Major League Baseball. Like, I think 162 games is way too long. Same thing in the NBA. I think 82 games is too many games in the NBA. Like, okay. So when I see these reports of any league wanting to expand the regular season, like, give it a rest, man. And I get it. More revenue, more games. Like, it makes total sense from a business perspective. But my goodness, we're already playing too many games as is. So to add 2 more games to the schedule, and in the report, teams were saying that they were a little bit upset that there was an uneven number of games against division rivals, because within your division, you're either playing your division rival 3 or 4 times. So for example, if you're the Leafs, you know, it's not fair if you have to play Tampa and Boston 4 times, but you only get to play the Habs and Red Wings 3 times. Just to bring up an example. I'm not saying the Leafs are the ones who complained about this, but that's just an example for you, right? And I think that's totally fair. Like, you know, some teams are getting shafted playing the 2 best teams in their division more times than the bottom teams in their division. But anyway, I think it's too many games. As for the play-in tournament, I think that would be really interesting, but I think it works more in the NBA, because the NBA is more of like a stars and scrubs league, where you have like the 2 or 3 best teams in each conference, and then everyone else is just honestly not very good. And I know you can kind of make that argument in the NHL to a certain extent, but I just think there's more parity in the NHL, and I think there's always more of an opportunity for those lower seeds to beat the higher seeds in a 7-game series. So that's why I don't want to see the play-in tournament in the National Hockey League. As exciting as it might be, I think it's more exciting to actually watch like a wild card team try to take out one of the top teams in the conference, because I think it's always in play in the NHL, just based on the parity, and just honestly based on the nature of hockey itself, how one bounce here, one bounce there can change an entire game or an entire series on its head.
Yeah. I hear both arguments, and like I respect both arguments of it. The playing thing to me, like, well, you mentioned like the expanded schedule, so you didn't like it in the NFL either, adding the game.
Yeah, even the NFL, like the I don't think 17 game. I don't like it, and I get it. Obviously, it's just pure business, but I think it's too many games as well.
Yeah. I don't know. I think there's a lot of things I think that are inevitable, like not just in the National Hockey League, but in all sports, like further expansion. People may think I'm crazy, but I think all the leagues are going to see teams all over the world at some point. Like I think Stockholm will have a hockey team. I think London will have a hockey team. And I'm not saying in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. I'm just saying I think we'll get there eventually. And these topics regarding the season itself, I think kind of fall in the same boat. I think they're kind of inevitable. The owners are going to want more games. Something like a play-in is going to drive revenue. Everyone's going to be watching. Think of it, man. Think of it if you're a team. If you're a team, let's say that you're a middle market team and you're fighting for a playoff spot. You're not a team that sells out every single game. You get a play-in game. Like I'll say it as someone from Ottawa. So the Senators had their summer, they signed all their big names. Like, let's say right now, I mean, they're kind of behind the eight ball a little bit, but let's say they go on a run and they get into that spot where they can have a chance. Those games, like everyone's dialed in, man. Like everyone in this city would be going crazy. And then if they were at the higher part of the play-in and they have those games at home, that's a big ticket. Like, I mean, I would probably go just for the excitement of it, right? Not even cheering for a team, just like I want to be there to see this shit show. So I think they're inevitable. Like I think it's gonna happen. I really and truly do. And I guess as far as percentage goes, there's more teams now. Like we're at a point where, and people can debate this one, but we're at a point now. Okay, so 32 teams, half the teams in the league make the playoffs. You go back to when I was a kid. There's only 21 teams in the NHL. So you had to be bad to miss the playoffs. And then it gradually got, like the number got bigger and bigger of teams. So then the percentage of teams that made the playoffs got lower. So on that end, I don't know, like on that end, is it okay then to have like kind of a greater chance for teams to get in because we have more teams that like you kind of have a shot? Because let's face it, like if you get into that 10th spot, you didn't make the playoffs, but you're at least in the mix and you make it reasonable. Like, I don't know if people have that take at all.
Yeah, I just think when you're playing 82 games, that should be more than enough to determine whether you're good enough to make the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And
I agree. Yeah.
It's just, I get it. Honestly, Lepore, I agree with you. And I think it probably is inevitable. It's going to get to a point where all of these leagues are going to expand and they're going to bring in these different wrinkles, whether it's a play-in tournament or an in-season tournament. I think all these leagues are going to experiment with something like that. I don't know. Call me a traditionalist. For the NHL specifically, because of the reasons that I outlined, I don't love the play-in tournament. And I think they already play too many games as is. It's hilarious because, especially with Leaf fans and, Leafs haters, it's like, oh, nothing matters until the playoffs. Oh, so now let's add more regular season games on top of the 82 that we have when everyone's already saying that the regular season doesn't mean anything. When we saw Montreal take out Toronto a couple of seasons ago when they had no business being in the playoffs, when we saw Montreal beat Pittsburgh in the first COVID season in 4 games, when Montreal beat Sidney freaking Crosby and Evgeny Malkin in a playoff series, when they were invited as the 23rd best team in the NHL to come back to that return to play plan. So I don't know, man. It just doesn't sit well with me.